reactor. I just react. If you know, you know, man. But anyways, today we got another soft white underbelly video. And this one just stood out to me for some reason. I don't know. I was looking today. This one just stood out. But it's coping with my son's suicide, James. It just made me think about my dad, and how he used to tell me all the time, like, he don't want me to have, like, bad thoughts and stuff. But, like, share, comment, subscribe. Hate it if you hate it. Like it if you like it, man. If you have anything you think I should react to, let me know down below, and I'll check it out. But, without further ado, let's get to it.
November 1st, 2023, the police came to my door, my front door. I work from home, and I was sitting in a chair right by the front door, and I saw them out there. This was the day after Halloween, so I thought something happened in the neighborhood, maybe, kids screwing around or something like that. And I remember closing my laptop. It was in my lap. So specifically remember that click of that last close. There was like this finality to closing the computer that time. For whatever reason, I'd done it a trillion times before and after, but that particular time is so seared into my brain. I went to the door and said hello to the police. And they said, are you the father of Callum Titchener? And I realized suddenly this was not going to be about kids in the neighborhood. But my son, he could get up to a lot of shit, right? So at first I thought, oh God, what has he done? As in, what kind of trouble has he gotten into? But then very quickly realized they don't come to your door for that. So when they said, we regret to inform you, it's like a line out of a movie, right? And everything just gets got so surreal. Like the moment everything just changed. Like the best way I can describe it is this black hole suddenly opened right next to me. This black hole. My son collapsed into a black hole, literally. And the police were very nice. You could tell in their faces they did not like doing this job. I think it's hard to remember exactly the details of that moment, but I remember kind of collapsing against the doorway. I remember them saying, let's go inside. They took me inside. And then I just remember just this feeling of, like, what the fuck? Like, what? And I asked for some details, and they said he had killed himself in a park in downtown Vancouver, sort of on the edge of our Skid Row, downtown east side. And he had gone out that night, Halloween night, like he did every year.
But why though?
But decided, I guess, that was the last night for him.
Why?
Like even now, trying to tell the story is just so insanely confusing. That moment of getting that kind of news and trying to integrate this reality of your little boy no longer is. And they made sure that I called somebody because I was alone at home. I think I called my mom first. And the giving the news to people is the memory of their reactions is just shocking. The tone of their voice, like when I told my mom, her exclamation was guttural. And that would continue on and on as I told people through the week or through that first day. And then I don't remember a lot of the next hour or so. I must have been on my own because the cops were outside and they had victim services coming. And my dad was the first one to show up. So he must have shown up like a half hour, 45 minutes later. And I just collapsed into his lap, crying, obviously, like a little boy. And then immediately the victim services come and they have pamphlets and they have information and they have details of what you're going to do and what's the coroner's phone number.
How old was your son?
Callum was 21.
And was there any signs of this before this happened?
Yes. So
today's video is sponsored by BetterHelp. I work every day. I don't take sick days. Some days everything falls into place, and other days it just doesn't. We've all been there. Life has its ups and downs, and that's just how it goes. When things feel heavy, having the right support is simple. And licensed, there's no problem to wait for the right to get. It's about
suspicion of. I mean, the first thing the police said is there's no suspicion of foul play or anything like that. They were very certain. They gave me his phone. They gave me his wallet. Callum, like right from day one, was just a wild, interesting, eclectic, brutally intelligent, creative outsider, really. Like, he always pushed the envelope in everything he did. Being parented, it was always...
That's crazy that you say outsider, because I'm like, it'll always be the outsider. I remember, like, even me, like, I had my few little friends, but like, like you my friend or something. But like, I had thoughts, or I don't know, like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, it's like you just don't get along with like most people because you know I don't know, like, if it's a trust thing, or like if it's, I don't know, you just have one or two people that you're friends with, and it's like y'all talk sometimes, and then it's like, but most of the time, but even with your friends though, like, you still, like, even me, when I think about it, like with my friends, like, even when me and my friends was all hanging out first, I ain't hung out with my friends in like a year and a half almost. Like, when me and them was hanging out in the beginning, I felt like an outsider. Like, I don't know, like, it's a tough thing to explain, like, what being an outsider is like, but it's cold though. But at the same time, it's like, maybe you was, or I was an outsider for a reason. If you an outsider watching this, because I don't know, I know it's people that fit in the crowd watching this too. But no, that's crazy.
a challenge and a battle, but in a very sophisticated way. He wasn't just like an asshole at all. He was always so smart with how he would kind of control the situations. He was just an insanely creative person. But with all of that, I think there's sort of an isolation that comes from that. His family life was turbulent when he was younger, when he was in his early teens. He, I think grade 8, he decided to quit school. Not because he was failing at all, but because he just couldn't stand how boring the school was. Like, it just killed him. Like, it killed him to have to do projects and title pages and just.
I know how that feel.
He was reading 1984 when he was 10 years old, and that informed his attitude towards Ministry of Education, which he always thought was such an ironic title. And more and more as he grew after quitting school, and we sort of worked through, is that going to be the right thing to do? And you can always go back and just try, because you couldn't just, there was no world where I would like, there's no fucking way you're doing that, you're going to school, I'm going to stand over your ass in school. Like, it was never.
Nah, he definitely was the laid back, chill, he was the fun parent. Now on the other hand, on the other side, the mom, I'm not sure about that one. But no, I could definitely sense like he was a laid back one, kind of just checked on him time to time, made sure he was alright and stuff, Kind of like my dad. Kind of like my dad.
Work. He would always, it would just be this war. It would just be a battle. So the best thing would be like, okay, this is a decision you've made. These are the consequences of that. So let's figure out how to make the best of the situation and know that you always have the option to go back, sort of thing. And so for 2 years, he self-educated, and he read philosophy, and he read history, and he read politics, and he read an insane amount of poetry. His love of poetry was deep and traditional. So we're talking like Blake and Coleridge and Yeats and Gerard Manley Hopkins, like the greats. And he understood what he read so much better than I did. Like, I hoped that I could help with his self-education, homeschooling, but there was no way. Like, he was teaching me.
He was born with.
Yeah, he was like a Celtic soul. His mom is English, and he had some connection to those roots, those English roots, and the poetic roots and the romance.
Was there anyone else in the family who he may have inherited this from?
In terms of like direct creative, his family, there's creative people in his family, like, but nothing like that. It's actually, he was almost like this shot out of the void. Like, he just was so different from everybody. And it's just so talented. And he started playing guitar when he was really young, when he was 7, and basically was self-taught, and started his first band, the Ransackers, his one and only band, when he was 11 with his 2 friends. And over the course of his teenage years, he wrote a ridiculous amount of poetry. He wrote a ton of essays. His teenage years, 2 friends.
What was the name of it?
And Ransackers, his one and only band, when he was 11 with his 2 friends. And over the course of his teenage years, he wrote a ridiculous amount of poetry. He wrote a ton of essays. He would do all of this stuff to like show that he was educating himself, but he just had no outlet to share it with. And our world is not conducive to this kind of person, right? Like, he wrote on a typewriter. He wrote with little hand notebooks. He had no phone. I think he had a flip phone for a while, but there was no cell phones. The only thing he ever used a computer for was to like watch old poets read their poetry on YouTube.
Time out. Hold on. Wait a minute. Okay. Now I'm a little confused. Why did he only have a flip phone? I don't know if he's saying it like he never wanted a phone or something. I don't know. I'm curious to what he gonna say when we get to the part about like girls and stuff.
Like, it's ridiculous. He watched the Dick Cavett show, endless amounts of Dick Cavett, of all things, on YouTube. Like, he was just such a kind of an old man, like an old soul. He walked around with a beautiful suit and tie, so gorgeously put together, so handsome, big and tall.
He miss his son.
But I guess when he turned 16 or 17, he decided he wanted to go back to school. But he didn't want to go to school to learn. He wanted to go to school to meet people, because he was feeling lonely and he was feeling isolated. And so he goes to school. He gets a girlfriend. He gets a bunch of friends. But he also
he did
kind of gets a little wild. He starts drinking a lot. He's idolizes say Jim Morrison's and the Kurt Cobains. Not so much Kurt Cobain at that point, but Nick Cave. He really loved Nick Cave. Kind of the hardcore musicians, right? And these guys experimented a lot with drinking and drugs, and he was going to do that too. He read all of William Burroughs. At some point, he decided he was going to do heroin. never really said this to me, but at the same time, he wasn't ever hiding this stuff from me, right? Like, we had a really good relationship, very open. So, I guess, cut ahead to the summer before he died. His band is getting quite hot in Vancouver. It's called the Ransackers. They're getting a lot of shows. They're getting a lot of attention. They're playing songs that he's written. They're really, really good songs, beautiful songs.
Wait. Hold on, wait. He got to perform and stuff. Wait. Hold on.
Quite hot in Vancouver. It's called the Ransackers. They're getting a lot of shows. They're getting a lot of attention. They're playing songs that he's written. They're really, really good songs, beautiful songs. And Vancouver's a tough town, man. Like, there's a lot of drugs. You know, you're not doing speed anymore. You're doing meth, and you're not doing heroin anymore. You're doing fentanyl. And somewhere along the line, he, I think, started to get depressed. And as a way to self-medicate, he started using these drugs. And he went fast. Like, it was a very quick descent. And I feel horribly responsible in that I didn't see it.
Why? But see, and this is my whole thing, is this is what I'm scared of. Because I remember over the last few days and why I ain't been posting, because I ain't been in the right space in my head. I just got a lot on my mind. You know, I mean, not as much as I did, but you know, I had a lot on my mind. But you know, I try to remember. You know, my dad tells me all the time, because I had to talk to him about 2-3 times this past week. I try to always remember what he tell me. Sometimes, son, he actually texts me this. I laugh because I was waiting for an order. I was waiting for an order doing DoorDash. He texted me and said, because this is his famous thing to say, you know. But he always says, sometimes, son, you can only do the best you can. And he is absolutely right. But I would never want him to feel responsible for such a situation, you know, because, you know, I don't really have to say, you know, whether I thought about it. You can go in my past videos and you can go to my past videos, you know, like it's, but I try, and that's what I texted him. That's what I texted him. I'm trying. I'm trying.
It coming. I had no idea. I tell myself I had no idea, but I could tell like he was living a wild life. I just didn't know what it involved, and he was such a resilient person that I thought somehow he was going to be able to get through it. And I think he realized, particularly when he started with the fentanyl, that there was no getting through that. That fentanyl is not a drug that, like John Coltrane does not do fentanyl and then do what he does, right? It's a completely different world.
Maybe heroin, but not fentanyl.
Exactly. And you can't get heroin anymore. There's
Right.
no such thing. So he had always had a little bit of a, I don't want to say obsession, but not an interest. It's like the word in between obsession and interest in suicide, because so many of the poets that he loved had committed suicide at some point or died very young. So he had this feeling of fate, I think, that he carried with him.
Take a seat, ladies. It's members only.
Captain is hot. Captain, you've been working out. Everyone wants to see Captain.
So all of this story, a lot of this story of what had happened and how he had gotten where he got to, I got in the first night with my daughter and his ex-girlfriend. And this experience for me,
You heard what he just said? I wasn't even gonna say it. I wasn't even gonna say it, but I just knew that him and that girl had to be broken up because if they was,
of losing this person who was my person, man, like him and my daughter Kendra were my people. Like they're just my everything. And to lose that person in your life is it's monumental. Like
It's been how long?
it's been 18 months. I want to talk a little bit about the first night because I feel like the reason I'm here is to try and like share the experience of this. That a great grief, everyone's gonna have a different experience, and you get into this. I had no idea what to do when it happened. I had no idea just the mechanics of like, well, where's his body and how do we move it from point A to point B? And I just wanted my boy. I just want to be with my son. Like he's my son, but they won't let me see him because he died in a public place. So the coroner's involved and the paperwork has to be done. And, I panicked the first day, like calling the numbers that they gave me, hoping that somebody would help me just get to him. And they're like, well, I don't think we can do this till Friday. This was a Wednesday. And Monday was going to be a holiday. And it's fucking hell. Like it's hell. This idea that this person that I was the first person to hold him when he came into the world, and then he goes out and I can't do anything for him, and he's stuck in this body processing system where the people in it are really wonderful and they really want to do good, but the system itself is just so regimented, and to like not be able to get to him was just killed me. The first night, after with so many people, my family descended and people started sending food and surrounded by love and surrounded by support. But the first night I was on my own, and some of my family wanted me to take some sort of sleeping thing, and I just didn't want to do it. Like I wanted to just be clear in this experience. So the first night was just as dark as it can get. Like words really fail. Like you just can't, unless you've been there or when you go there, you just can't know how empty you can feel. And that black hole is so present. It's so.
Oh, and I just want to say this because I know you're not gonna see the video, but thank you, Dad. I love you for always trying to uplift me. You know, I know sometimes I get in my dark times and I don't know what to do. I get lost in myself and my actions. But I just want to say I appreciate you. I just had to say that.
Just pulling at you. And I had a dog, a beautiful dog, golden retriever, Bruce, who was like my anchor. Because he would lie in the end of the bed with me, or he would lie next to the bed with me, or sometimes in the bed. And he was just like, I just held on for dear life to him. And the dreams were weird. Like I play a lot of cards, and that night it was just cards, like a wall of cards, back and forth for hours, just cards. And what you do with the cards. It wasn't even like images of cards, it was the ideas of the cards. It was like my interior protecting me from what was underneath that, the horror, just the utter fucking horror. And thinking about his last hours, thinking about why he did what he did, thinking about him sitting in that park by himself.
It was fentanyl that killed him?
No, he hung himself from a tree.
No! I was not expecting that. I was not expecting that. that I was. Bro.
You did?
In the park. This little birch in the tree. This park is full of beautiful old trees, but there's this little birch, and he, for whatever reason, decided to outright kill himself. He had been doing fentanyl that night with his friends. I think he did meth as well, and he drank a lot. So, what kind of mind state was he in? Those are the things you also ask yourself, like how conscious of this was he? It was a very public street, like it's Main Street in Vancouver, so cars, busy, but it was also Halloween, so you worry that somebody saw him but didn't think it was a real person, that was maybe some sort of Halloween costume thing. And he had tried to kill himself a few days earlier, where he had come over to my house on the Sunday morning. I woke up and my dog somehow had gotten out of the house, so I woke up in this panic of like, gotta get the dog before he goes and does something. And Callum was sitting on the couch, and when I saw him sitting on the couch, he was just pale, and his eyes were so big, and he looked haunted, just like haunted. And we found the dog, and we sort of met up at the kitty corner of our house, and he had, I was sort of mad because I think he had let the dog out thinking that we were in the other house. And I really regretted not bringing him back to my house, not seeing how in bad shape he was, and not bringing him back to my house and just letting him fall asleep in my bed. And he just went home to his place and tried to kill himself that morning. But he was discovered by friends. And thank Christ, thank God, talk about fortune, I was able to see him again. I didn't know that had happened. I didn't find out until after the Wednesday when he did actually do it, that he had been suicidal. And we went out to dinner then 2 days before he died and had a beautiful dinner and went and saw a movie. And for whatever reason, I had this urge at the dinner to just touch his face. Just touch him. I don't know why. He's like this grown-ass guy, right? He was not a sentimental person. I think, when he was young, we would hug lots, but once he was a teenager, teenagers don't want to hug you. But I just had this urge to just touch him and tell him that I think I told him I loved him, and I said, you should come over more. Come over as much as you want. He would come over on Sundays, but I just said, come over more. And that was the last time I saw him. So,
do you think you knew?
Maybe. I mean, I knew he was struggling, and people in the community and people around him had mentioned things to me saying, a little worried about him. He's pretty wild. And I would ask him, are you okay? Is everything okay? And his answer was, I'm the last great punk of Vancouver. So I thought it kind of had something to do with his band and his show.
No. That sounds like something from the poetry thing.
And that it was like, like that is a punk path, I guess, is like just living right on the very edge. And he was hardcore, man. He just went hard. And his last few shows, I have some video of that. I put a lot of video on YouTube just to keep the spirit alive. And some of them are hard to watch because you can see how high he is and how kind of gone he is on stage, and watch because you can see how to keep the spirit alive.
What?
And some of them are hard to watch because you can see how high he is and how
what's his name?
Kind of gone he is on stage. And
what do you say? I'm gonna go back.
Wild shows, but it definitely
after I finished the reaction, of course.
Got to a point where we're just like, fuck. But I never thought he would go for it. I never thought he would actually take that step. I knew there was worries, and I was worried, but I always thought he would somehow pull it out. But I also never thought he would get into fentanyl. I just
Man,
never.
I ain't even gonna lie to you, man. It take time, for real.
I thought he would draw some sort of line. We had talked about this stuff, like, and I thought that was a line in the sand kind of thing. But I think there's basically 2 weeks between when he died and when we had the funeral. And the most important thing I could think of at that time was to see him. I had to see him. And thankfully, there was this lovely woman he was way out in the middle of nowhere, Coquitlam. I guess the Vancouver morgue was too full. So we drove all the way out there, and this lovely woman there had prepped him for my visit. And I was the only person, other than his girlfriend, on the funeral day that saw him before we did the cremation. And
I thought it was his ex. That's what he said, right? He said ex. Now he's saying girlfriend. And she went.
yeah, I went into the room. I had this urge. I just had to take my shoes off for some reason, and he was lying on this bed up at the front of the room. I think he was the first body I'd ever seen. And I just cried and wailed and told him everything's gonna be okay. You're gonna be all right. We're gonna do this.
Hold on, wait.
Bed up at the front of the room.
I gotta
Other
be
than his
missing
girlfriend
something.
on the funeral day that saw him. We did the cremation, and I went into the room. I had this urge. I just had to take my shoes off for some reason, and he was lying on this bed up at the front of the room. I think he was the first body I'd ever seen. And I just cried and wailed and told him everything's gonna be okay. You're gonna be all right. We're gonna do this. All the people were doing this. We're gonna have a beautiful service. Like all this horseshit, just saying all this. Like I just couldn't let the moment. I just couldn't just be with him. You know, if there was any potential of him having some view of this, he just would have been like, "Shut up, shut up already." But oh my God, to see your son. Like it's just you can't. There's no way to describe these things well, easily. A body of your boy, not something you ever want to see. One of the other things that began happening around here at this time, I sort of wanted to include in this story is, and I think this happens to a lot of people, particularly people who have this kind of great grief. They lose somebody shockingly. There's these synchronicities, Carl Jung synchronicities, where 2 events happen that have no connection to each other, but the meaning of those 2 events is just shockingly poignant. And
bro, he sent a. Hold on, wait. I'm actually trying to understand what he's saying.
There's these synchronicities, Carl Jung synchronicities.
Okay, what's that? What synchronicities? Events that coincide in time and appear meaningfully related. Meaningfully. Did I just say meaningfully? I really just did that. Meaning fully related yet lack a discoverable casual connection. I'm gonna have to look. I'm gonna have to read more into it. Okay.
It's where two events happen that have no connection to each other, but the meaning of those two events is just shockingly poignant. And
Okay, now that's another word. What does poignant mean? Evoking a keen sense of sadness or regret. Oh, wow. Oh, it's starting to make sense now. But I need more stuff. I need more information.
we started getting a lot of those. Myself and my daughter, his girlfriend. The first ones were sort of simple ones, like it was pouring rain all the 2 weeks, pouring rain in Vancouver, just storms and rain. Except when we would go out, when I'd have to walk the dog or something, and suddenly, like, it would just stop raining, just for that time. And the minute I step on the porch after the walk, pouring rain again. Or I'd be sitting out on the porch in the back and just break down numerous times. And as I broke down, the rain would come. Or another time, my daughter was in the park where he died with their friends, and they were sort of having a little moment at the bench that my son loved so much. And it was clear, it hadn't been raining for the whole time they were there. And literally, the minute they stood up to leave the bench, it just started pouring rain. So beautiful in a way, right? Like those moments are just, I sort of come to see them as like handholds. That when these things happen, you get this moment of like something beyond just the terminus of this experience, this end, that maybe there's something more that we don't know. And you can't be dismissive of them. And you also can't, it's so easy to logic them out, right? Obviously, there's some sort of selection bias, or obviously I'm just remembering the times when it stopped raining and not all the times it didn't stop raining. But you just can't go down that road. You need to like allow those moments to settle your heart a little bit. As we got closer to the funeral, I gathered all of this stuff together for him to put in his box, his burning box. There was a copy of Hamlet, which was his favorite piece of literature. It was almost like a religious text for him. There was a copy of this W.B. Yeats poetry that he loved so much. That was my copy. This little book of Blake poetry that supposedly was on Blake's body when he died. Not the actual copy, but a copy of the copy. Some beautiful garlands, this amazing walking stick. Just did out his box and just surrounded him in this beautiful, beautiful stuff. He looked so gorgeous in that box. For his whatever journey. And we had the service. We had like a little mini service at this cremation place, I guess, and then we had a much bigger service at this beautiful church downtown, which he loved. He loved old churches. He's a very spiritual person. He used to walk around with a Bible and read from the Bible, not because he was like religious at all, or like not a hardcore Christian kind of guy, but he just loved the poetry of the Bible, and he would just read.
Wow.
And my mom was more religious, and she spoke 2 pieces from the Bible. One was from Matthew, I think, and another one was Revelation 21, which maybe is a known piece for these sorts of events. I'm not sure. But weirdly, it turned out his password for all his email was Revelations 21, which is kind of an odd little coincidence. And the day, or at the service, the preacher guy, the pastor, very nice man, sort of started his little piece with how he had come across the Vancouver, or across the Lionsgate Bridge, and he had seen these 2 eagles in a tree sitting there watching him supposedly come across the bridge. And he said, that was a sign. There's a sign there. I was kind of, oh, that's nice. And then later, my daughter told me that when we were at the previous service, she'd looked into the sky and the 2 eagles were like circling our service, which was a really nice little connection there too. The church was full. It was beautiful. I was able to read a poem of his that had just been published. I mean, for him to die then just seems still incomprehensible. He had just gotten his first poem published. Him and his band, the Ransackers, they were going to play the Ivanhoe, which is right outside of where he died. They were going to play that Saturday. He had just started a new job that he was really happy about. It seemed like he was turning a corner. Fuck. So I was able to read this poem at his service. I was hoping I just want to read it here because I want him. This is for me. This is an opportunity to just like keep hymness going somehow. So the poem's called "Pattering a Prayer."
Okay, after he reads this, we gonna conclude it.
Pattering a prayer. Window worming jewels melt down, form and humdrum. The leaves are taken in a dreamt and windless fever. Gray November. Silence. Just before was your reporter. The city peaceful as a gaping moribund. No choice in grim placidity. Now pattering, a pariah at a wireless piano, playing preludes by the knock of velvet hammers. Nature bare, a black and comprehending nailhead. The beating of raindrops like the knock of beauty at the pupil, hair washed black and lashes keen, and blue eyes blinking bubbles like the puddle's bleak indifference. Silence thus implied as thy defier. Sparrow song is cracked, the sound of human voices hollowed, the downpours bound oblivion, a patter that indicts the ear, a static lacquer lacking tactic.
I felt that. But if you stayed to the end, I appreciate you. If you didn't, maybe next time. Catch y'all on the next one. And
Okay, wait, hold on.
don't ever disrespect me like that. And condolences to his son.